Welcome, everybody, to the Yolo Basin Foundation's virtual public wetland tour. You're currently looking at a view of the wetlands out here at the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. We're going to get started. My name is Sabrina Britt. I'm a volunteer coordinator with Yolo Basin Foundation, but I'm going to let Carol, our tour guide, take it away.
Good morning and welcome. Before we get started, we want to be able to let you answer some questions. And so we have some basic instructions on how to go about doing that. First, you go to the chat feature at the bottom of the toolbar. Hover over the bottom to make it pop up if you don't see it. Then click the chat and the chat box should open, hopefully. Type in your question to the moderator of the questions, and the moderator will let me know that there's a question, and then she will ask the question for you. We will be recording. Okay, we're going to get started then. The Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area is managed by the California Fish and Wildlife Department, and the Yolo Basin Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and it partners with the Department of Fish and Wildlife Service, and it provides education to the public and to the students. The Yolo Bypass programs have gone virtual recently, so that's what we're doing today, having virtual. But the wildlife area is still open for you to come down and enjoy. We have 5 miles of auto tour, and along the auto tour there are designated parking lots where you can park, get out and take some hiking trails and enjoy your visit to the wildlife area safely. We are open every day of the year except for Christmas and if there's a flooding in the bypass. Now we have a picture of a map up here. You can pick a copy of this map up at the headquarters office, which is located on Charles Road, just west of the entrance to the bypass area. And you can enter the wildlife area from Charles Road. There are big signs up. If we could go back to the wetlands, you'll see off to the left of the screen, there's traffic going over an elevated stretch of highway. This is Interstate 80. It's called the Yolo Causeway, and it's a 3-mile stretch of elevated highway between West Sac and Davis. And the purpose for it being elevated is so when the bypass floods, there still can be movement of traffic between Sacramento and Davis and places west. Okay. So we're going to concentrate today on what we see in the wetlands. We are located right now, your scope is scanning across from parking lot A. And we had some rain last night, so we do have some ducks swimming around. And we're going to look for some things that are new and try to identify what's out here. This time of the year, between October and February, is the fall migration of waterfowl. So that's what we're mainly going to focus on today, is the waterfowl. And for this waterfowl, this is usually the end of the Pacific Flyway for a lot of them. And these birds migrate from their breeding grounds in the spring. They migrate down to the Central Valley and even further down to South America for the fall migration. And they come in, the smaller birds come in to find a mate and spend the winter here. And then in the spring, with the mate that they've gotten, they fly back up to their breeding grounds. So California Central Valley is one of the stopovers for some of the birds that go all the way down to South America. But for other birds, this is the end of the flyway for them. So we provide wetlands and assure them to have water and food when they arrive to replenish some of the energy that they used up getting here. So we're going to try to identify some of them birds that we're seeing out here. We have a spotting some birds going off to the right or to the left, and we look for field marks in the birds, and I'm not seeing any birds that are larger birds, so we're going to concentrate on northern shovelers and the mallards. And I did see a couple of northern shovelers floating around out there in the spotting scope. These are called ducks. Ducks come in two different classifications. They come as dabbler ducks, or they come as diving ducks. Diving ducks do exactly what they say, dive. The two ducks are shaped different. The leg positions on them are different. For the dabbler ducks, the leg positions are in the middle of the body. And the diving ducks, the leg positions are at the back of the body to give them more push to stay down at the bottom in deep water to feed off of the bottom of the water. I'm just seeing some pretty cool birds out here. The one that's floating off in the center of the scope, it's a red bird, sort of reddish looking rusted color or cinnamon color. We're looking at different types of things that you can pick out that would be unique to a bird. And to see this red bird out there, we call it a cinnamon teal. It's one of the smaller ducks, and we have it sitting here just in a picture, but it's really brilliant, and it's cinnamon teal. So the whole entire bird is cinnamon colored, and it has a red eye, and it has black on the tail. But that one's a really, really easy bird to identify. The other ducks that we have that are swimming by, you can get a good hint of what that bird looks like by calling it's a shoveler. It's a northern shoveler, and the reason it's called a northern shoveler is that it has a larger bill than the other ducks, and it's a heavy bill. And at the tip of the bill, it looks more like a spoon or a shoveler. But it's very, you can see it has cinnamon on the side colors there. And we have a mallard duck. Now the northern shoveler also, the feathers on its head can show up as being green, the same as the green on the mallard duck. And so a lot of times people get them confused. But if you look at the bill on the mallard compared to the bill on the shoveler, we know that it's we know that it's a shoveler, who the shoveler is. The other one that might give you an indication by its name is the pintail. Now you'll see a pintail right there in the scope coming across now. And if you look at the back of this duck, it has a tail that's like a long, very thin tail on them. And the other ducks are usually short, blunt tails. So we have a question? I'm sorry. Did we have a question? Okay, I guess I didn't hear that. So the pintail is a very regal duck, and it's a large duck like the mallard. They're almost the same size, but the mallard is a little bit heavier of a duck, and the pintail has a longer neck than most of the other ducks. And with that white bib on the front, it really stands out as a long neck And it's a field marking too. If you see a white chest like that with a line going up to the side of the back of the head. But you can see the tail, and the one that was right next to it in the picture was a female or a hen pintail. And the female ducks are this time of the year, and all the time of the year actually, are drab compared to the males. And the males this time of the year are in what they call the breeding plumage. Breeding plumage is usually bright, colorful flower, you know, that they can be seen for the different markings. They come out real, this one is very elegant, and I call it sort of like the royal family of the ducks because they're so elegant and royal, standing straight up. And the bill on the male is actually blue this time of the year. So you can see the female right beside it is brown. One of the ways to identify a female, because females are usually really hard, difficult to identify because they're all usually a drab, mottled brown. And so one of the things that I do is I look for what male she might be, what drake she might be beside, because if she's hanging around with a colorful male, it's usually the male of her species. So if you look way up in the top center of the picture, you'll see some ducks that have a white line on the side. It looks like a vertical line right about their shoulder. They're the ones that are in the center of the screen, and they're swimming a little bit to the left. These are called green-winged teals. Now we had the cinnamon teal. The green-winged teal is about the same size as the cinnamon teal. But you look at that white line. Okay, we've lost the green-winged teal, but he'll come back. There's the green-winged teal. We have a picture of it, but you see the white line? That is one of the most distinct field markings for identifying any of the birds. It's the only one that shines from a really far distance. And even if the day is a day like today where the sun's not out and you can't get bright colors to distinguish the different birds real clearly, you'll never make a mistake if you see that white vertical line going from the breast up to the wing, the shoulder. It's just a very, very strong field marking, and it helps you to identify it. So you can always be sure that if there's a green-winged teal out there, you'll be able to see that white mark and then tell everybody, oh, there's a green-winged teal out there. I think you're an expert. Okay, so let's see what else we see in here. So we had shovelers and we had pintail. Now, a lot of times if you're looking in the distance and you don't have a spotting scope and it's hard to see, you'll see the birds are up on maybe a Thule Island resting or something, and you'll see all these birds with white on them. Even if they're swimming around out there, if the scope wasn't here and we just had a pair of binoculars or looking for our certain birds, we'll see that there's white. So we could probably determine that those birds are either northern shovelers, which are swimming just off to the left. You can see that they have a white breast on them. The other bird out there that has a white breast that might be resting and having its head buried under its wing is the pintail. They both have white breasts, and a lot of times you'll look out and you just don't know which bird it is. But once you see them swimming and you see them beside each other, you can tell that there's pintails because you'll notice that long tail, or they're shovelers because they have that big, long, black bill where the pintail has the bill. Let's see. So we have mostly, they're all dabblers. I'm not seeing any diving ducks today so far. We have pintails up at the top. The diving ducks, like I said before, have their legs positioned further back on their body. So it makes it a little bit difficult for them to get out of the water and walk on land. They aren't very stable because they have to stand a little bit upright because all that weight is in front of their legs, and so they could topple over pretty easily. And you wonder, if we have millions and millions of ducks coming in sometimes, where do they get all the food that they need? What do they eat?
We have a question about the food, and are there any plans to install a remote viewing cam in the wetlands?
The second part of that question, as to whether there's any plans to install a camera in the wetlands, that one I would have to find out from someone from the Fish and Wildlife Office or the Yolo Basin Foundation. I don't know that answer. And the first part of your question was
what do these ducks eat?
Okay, the dabbler ducks, they eat in shallow water, and they eat some aquatic vegetable or vegetation. They eat seeds and some invertebrates. And what they do is they usually go along, and sometimes when they tip up and have their butt up in the air, it's because they're shoveling around the bottom mud under the water and letting little invertebrates come out or seeds come up, and they will pick them up that way. So they eat a lot of different seeds, different aquatic vegetation, and they have lamellae on both sides of their mandibles, and they when they go down and they get the aquatic vegetation, or they get some invertebrates and stuff, they want to keep them in the mouth and swallow them. But if they swallow, they're going to take in a lot of water. So in order to not be swallowing so much water and just getting the nutrition that they need from their food, when they come up, they bring their bills up out of the water. You'll see them, especially on a mallard, it's easy to see. When they come up, they would just squirt the water out and then filter and keep the food in their bills so that they can eat the food. And the diving ducks, they can eat the same type of food as the dabblers, but they go deeper down, and they will, when they scruff up the mud with their bills and stuff, they can get out a lot of invertebrates, but they also eat fish, and some eat crawdads if they're smaller. And so they have a little bit of a different diet, but a lot of them eat the same thing. Even the swans will eat a lot of the same seeds as the dabblers eat, but they all feed at different levels, and that's why there's enough food for everybody. What you're looking at now is a black-necked stilt. These birds are about 14 inches tall. They're what we call a shorebird. They like to wade in shallow water, and they have a straight bill. Their field markings are those long, skinny legs and very small head, but they have a straight black bill. And they're called a black-necked stilt because the black feathering goes up the back of the head and on their back, and then they're white otherwise. They're very regal-looking birds, and they walk along. I don't know if we had some out here earlier. I don't know if we had any right now that we can see, but they will dip their bills into the mud flats and get out invertebrate and also eat some aquatic plants. So a lot of them eat the same type of thing, but they just do it at a different level and a different spot. Even the green-winged teal, which we had before, with the one with the white bar on the side, one of the few ducks that eat up on the mud flat rather than swimming around in the water and eating. It likes to get up on, oh, there's the black-necked stilt. Okay. And you can see how they just walk very slowly, and then they'll see something in the water and reach down and pick it up. But a lot of times you'll see them in large groups when they migrate, and So they're very interesting to watch how they just step so easily in, and they stay in the mud flats usually to eat. The other birds right there behind them are brewer's blackbirds, and the one field marking for them is they have a really bright yellow eye. Otherwise, they're just plain black. And these are ones that you'll see a lot of times in supermarket parking lot or picnic grounds, but they like the wetlands too. And a lot of times they come in big groups. They get up on the tules and eat the seeds on the tules, and then they fly in great big flocks back and forth in a formation called a muration, where you'll see big flocks of birds going all one direction, and they switch really fast to go the opposite direction. And it's rather spectacular to watch them. And this is another blackbird that is in the wetlands a lot, and they're the red-winged blackbirds. Beautiful birds, and they also do the same type of behavior as the brewer's blackbirds. Another blackbird that we have in the wetlands in the spring is the yellow-headed blackbirds, and they're very spectacular to see. So we have some beautiful birds down here that you can see even if there aren't any waterfowl at this time. But some of the other markings that you would find would be the size of a bird's bill. You could tell the difference between one bird and another if you're looking at a distance, such as if you looked at a pelican. You know, a pelican has a big, long, heavy bill, and it's a big bird. It's our biggest waterfowl bird. And if you put the pelican next to a swan, the difference between the swan and the pelican would be probably the neck. The neck of the swan is very long and narrow, you know, slender, and the pelican is more stout, and it's a more robust bird anyway. So we have
Carol, someone would like to know what the blackbirds eat.
What the blackbirds eat? They eat seeds and grain. And they probably eat insects. All the birds seem to eat insects to get a lot of energy, especially if it's coming up on the breeding season. They eat a lot of invertebrates, and but this time of the year, there's a lot of them where you can see the vegetation there. A lot of vegetation has seeds, pods in it, and the birds like to pick on those, and they'll get into tules. But if you look at the tules, they look like they're just sticks, but at the top of the tules, there's little pods of seeds, and they like to get up there. And that's why you'll see the blackbirds in big, large groups on top of the tules if you go down. So if another bird we have that's a white bird here, that's a large bird, is the snow goose. And the snow goose, if you're looking at snow geese and pelicans flying, and the pelicans certainly are a lot bigger than the snow geese, but both have black tips at the ends of their wings when you can see them from underneath. And looking at the birds from a far distance, if the snow geese are closer than the pelicans, sometimes, and you're just looking in the sky, you can't see the difference between them, because the pelicans are the same size, but they're off further, so they look smaller. And if you look, you can see these snow geese in this picture. They're usually in large groups, and they're usually beating their wings, and they fly in formation, but sometimes the formation breaks up, and as they're flapping along, they're very noisy. They're always talking to each other. And the pelicans could fly right over top of you, and you never heard them coming. They were just super quiet birds. Once they're up in the air, they seem to be gliders, and they just glide along, and one bird seems to lead all of them to do something. And so once they get closer to you, there's no doubt who they are. But if you're looking at them and the pelicans are a lot further off, you sometimes don't know if they're snow geese or pelicans. But when you see the behavior, they fly at a glide, and then when they come closer and you don't hear them talking, you know that they must be pelicans and not snow geese. So a lot of times it's just looking at the bills of a bird, looking at the behavior of a bird. Sometimes the names. Now here's the pelicans, so you can see that big bill they have. And there might be a picture of we have a pelican and I think an egret together, and they're in a field, and it looks like they're not too much different in size. There's your egret, and it's a large bird also. I think the egrets are about 3 feet tall, so they're not a small bird, and that bill is very long and sharp and pointed, and they eat fish and crawdads, frogs. But sometimes if you don't have them right there in front of you and they're off a little bit, you have 2 large white birds. Which one are you looking at? You can see that the bill would be the ideal thing to point in to identify that bird. Well, we have another bird, but I haven't seen it out here today. Oh, I see there's a crow in the background there, and we have crows like to come in here. And
we have a question about whether the sandhill cranes come to the Yolo Basin.
The sandhill cranes, I think more so than coming to the Yolo Basin, they fly over it. There's many times you go down and you'll hear them coming in with their nice, beautiful call, and they fly over quite a bit. I haven't seen any in this part of the Yolo Basin in the wildlife area, but it seems like I'm always down there having sandhill cranes flying over. So if you can learn the call of a sandhill crane, or once you see a sandhill crane and you hear the call, I think it's something you don't forget. You always recognize it because it's a very distinct call.
I will add to your answer, Carol.
Okay.
Lucia, if you want to spotlight me. So Carol had mentioned that we don't see, this is Sabrina Britt here. I'm a volunteer coordinator with Yolo Basin Foundation. I'm your videographer today, so I'm behind the scenes, but I'll add to what Carol just mentioned. We typically don't see the sandhill cranes stop here, but they do fly over. They prefer larger fields to feed in, so big meadows in between wetland spaces. And we have a lot more water here, so that could be one of the reasons, but we do see them at Casunas River Preserve. That's a great place to see sandhill cranes. Also, there was a question earlier, and Carol referred to asking staff, and since I'm here, I'll chime in as well, about having remote viewing cameras out here. And so currently we don't have those, and we don't have plans. We would love to do that in the future. The equipment is fairly pricey. So that would just be something that as funding comes in to support what we do, that may be something we'll be able to do for you all in the future. We'd love to be able to. We do work with UC Davis and other researchers that put in cameras for us to at least track some of the wildlife out here, to know where they're moving, what they're doing out here for the research purposes. So those, sometimes partnering with universities, we're able to do that for their research projects. We allow them access out here into the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area to do that, to put up those cameras for a certain amount of time for them to gather the tracking data that they need. So great, thank you. Good questions. Keep them coming, and we'll switch it back over to Carol to share more about the birds you're seeing in the scope.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. One of the birds that I haven't seen.
Carol, there's a question about how can you tell the difference between the hawks?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
The question is, how can you tell the difference between all the hawks in the Yolo Basin?
Okay. You can tell the difference. Well, this right here is a northern harrier. And the northern harrier, you'll see the white patch at the base of the tail. And that is very distinct of the northern harrier. Now, the northern harriers are a hawk that the females and the males have total different coloration. The males are gray and the females are brown. So if you see a brown one with a white patch at the base of the tail, it's a female northern harrier, and the males are gray and they have that white patch. So they fly very close to the top of the vegetation and just kind of soar over top of it. So they're one of the birds that they don't fly very high up like the other hawks. You'll see them just scooting over top of the tules and looking for rodents on the ground. And the other ones, for the red-shouldered hawks, they have barred tails. They have red on the shoulders, red on the breast. It's just looking at the field markings. Hawks sometimes can be very difficult because they have different phases. Oh, and this isn't a hawk, but they have different phases. There was a dark phase and a light phase on the red-tailed hawks, on the Swainson's hawks. The Swainson's hawks have a flight pattern that's a little bit different than the other hawks, where if you're familiar with the way a turkey vulture flies, they kind of go tipping one side to the other. And the Swainson's hawks also have a slight tipping like that, where the other hawks fly and they're smooth flying. They don't tip like that. There are different sizes in the hawks. There's some hawks that are, the Cooper's hawk is a smaller hawk, and the Cooper's hawk and the sharp-shinned hawk are ancipiters, which they, one of their favorite foods is other birds. They used to call Cooper's hawk a chicken hawk because it liked to eat people's chickens, and still does today. Okay, the one bird that we're not seeing out here, that is one that looks like a duck, but it's not a duck. And what makes a duck? A duck has webbed feet. Now, the ducks that are swimming here, they're just swimming nice and smooth. They're hardly making any effort to move through that water, just like they're just flying across there. But the American coot is a black bird that looks like a duck. It has a small white bill, and it's a diver. So its legs are positioned further back on the body. Here we go.
Oops, I had it a minute ago.
And this is a otter, which we have a lot of those too. So sometimes if you come down, we don't have any birds to see, but there are other things to see. And the otters, if you see an otter family, we have several families of otters. They're usually you can see them in the channels or crossing the channels or the roads to get to another channel. So they're rather amusing animals to watch. And I know I always enjoy seeing them because they're a lot of fun. But back to the coot, we could get back to it. They have a different type of foot structure, so they're not really classified as a duck. They're more of same thing as a rail, where they would be off in the marshes and sometimes up on the land, and they walk on top of the vegetation. They walk in the mud flats, and so they used to be called mud daubers or mud hens, and it's because they walk up on the mud and they kind of pick the invertebrates out of the mud, and they also dive and eat the same type of stuff that a diving duck would eat, but they have a different type of foot. They don't have a webbed foot. So when they're walking and they're walking on mud, they don't sink, they don't have a hard time walking on mud because their foot will sink in. And as they come up, they don't have, the mud doesn't get on top of the webbing and make it heavy for them to try and pick up. But because they don't have a webbed foot, they don't have the power that a duck, when the duck goes to take off, if something frightens them and they go to take off, they can just give a good push with their foot, and the webbing gives them power to go up into the air pretty quick. But with the American coot, if they push, they don't have any webbing, because they don't get any power, so they have to paddle their feet as fast as they can do it, and then they're also flapping their wings to get some elevation, and they need a long runway to kind of take off. So a lot of times when the birds are all startled and they all take off, the ones that are left on the water are usually the coots, and by the time they get to take off, the threat is gone, and so they just stay back down in the water again. But they seem to be our most abundant duck at times, and I think it's because the hunters don't seem to hunt them because the hunters don't like the way they taste. So apparently they don't taste very good. This one.
Stop share. I had it a minute ago. Sorry.
That's okay. Can we go back to the swan?
Yeah. Oh, the swan.
Yeah, the swan would be good.
There are cinnamon teals feeding in the scope right now.
Yes. And it's got its head down. A lot of times, now the cinnamon teal, the teals seem to like to eat a little bit where the mud is, and so they go into more shallow water than the other ducks a lot of times. So you'll see them right around the edges of the reeds and where the water is a little bit more shallow. The other ducks like to skim along the shallow water, but they don't like to necessarily take the seeds out of the mud. And the one thing that the green-winged teal is known for is it likes to, more than most of the other ducks, get up on the mud flats, and it likes the seeds to be that are softened by sitting in the mud, the wet mud, if it's soupy mud. And so they like their seeds to be a little bit more softened, so they're not hard shelled like some of the other ducks would. And before I was talking about the swans and the geese, they eat pretty much similar food. They eat aquatic, whoops, here we go. Okay. They eat the aquatic plants and the seeds. And the one thing about you can see the swans here, a lot of them have brown necks. It's because they put their necks under, their heads under the water and feed, and they pick up coloring from what's in the water sometimes, and so they don't stay nice and pretty white. But the snow geese and the white-fronted geese and the swans, they all eat similar type foods, where they eat the aquatic vegetation and the seeds and some invertebrates. But the snow geese have a really sharp edge on the edge of their mandible, and they can snip off the tules, or they can snip off the cattail and get down and snip off tubers. So they can eat a little bit larger type vegetation than the other birds. And so this gives them an advantage when they come in. And so when we have lots of tules and lots of rice stubble in the fields, cattails, the snow geese really love that. And they have the ability with that sharp edge on the mandible to snip those off. Okay, so I'm trying to see if there's another. I thought I saw a different bird there, but I was looking for another field marking on a bird, and I thought I saw one before, but there's another bird that's pretty distinct that you can see. Is that it looks like it's pretty plain brown with and it has a black butt on it, and the black butt shows up from a far distance, and it's called a gadwall. And the one thing about a gadwall, when you get closer to it, it has a different shaped head than the other ducks, just slightly different shape. But once you notice that shape, it's easy to pick out and just use the shape of the head. So there's several things, you know, it's part of the field marks that you can use to identify the ducks. And we have a lot of green-winged teal. So I hope you're seeing that line, that vertical line on these green-winged teal. And the cinnamon teal. So I think if you come down to the wildlife area and you wanted to show your skills to someone, a friend to take down there with you, and you're safe being with each other, then you could probably impress them by saying the names of the ducks, because you can pick out those field markings. Okay. Do we have any other questions? We do have other animals here at the wildlife area. We have a lot of jackrabbits and little cottontail rabbits. We have owls, a lot of barn owls that like to eat the cottontail rabbits. But I don't know if you know the difference between a rabbit and a hare. A hare is what they call a jackrabbit. And the difference is that the cottontail rabbits are born naked, sort of like atricial birds are born naked. They don't have any feathers. Well, the cottontail rabbits don't have any fur. So they're very dependent on the mother to take care of them and keep them warm and feed them. And the hare, when they're born with hair on them already ready to go, just like a chicken. They start hopping right away. So they're not really a rabbit. So we also have a lot of the otters, which I mentioned before, but we have some beaver too. And the beaver.
We have time for one more question, Carol.
Okay.
If anybody wants it. This is your share. Stop sharing.
We do have a bat program that we have in the spring, and it goes through summer, and we have a population of Mexican free-tailed bats on both ends of the bypass.
Okay, so the question is, where can we find some more of the exotic birds?
Exotic birds.
Yes, exotic.
I'm going to ask a question. What type of exotic birds?
Let me see if there's any. Hold on. I'm going to put this up. Current slide.
You mean like the wood ducks? The wood ducks are more in riparian areas. They love the riparian area, and they nest in the trees.
Tanagers.
Oh,
do you know about tanagers?
Okay, this time of the year we don't have the tanagers.
Yellow throats.
And the yellow throats. These are called neotropical birds, and they usually come through in the spring. They start coming in in the spring, and some of them, they actually nest here. Other ones go further north, but they're coming in the fall. They usually head south to South America or Mexico. And then in the spring, they come back and come through here. Some of them nest here, and some will go on up further north to nest. So yeah, this is not the time of the year that we see a lot of neotropical birds. But we do see some little ruby-crowned kinglets, and we might see some bush tits.
Okay, it's time to just thank everybody for coming to the bypass. I put here on this last slide the Yolo Basin website, where you can find a lot more information about the programs that are offered. And thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And have a good day.